Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us again for our account-based selling webinar series. And today we're going to be talking about Salesforce.com, in particular, why and how to clean Salesforce.com. And without further ado, let's begin. I will be one of your presenters today. We'll also have Ken Morris, the CEO of RampedUp. How are you doing today, Ken?
Good, Scott. Glad to be here.
Great, thank you, Ken. And you know, we have a very, we have a lot of individuals that are logging into the webinar and understand that there are a lot of questions. So busy topic, and let's just get right into it. But first, we have a couple of housekeeping issues. We are going to be recording this webinar, and if you have any questions, please type your questions in the dialog box. And if you're reviewing this on a recorded webinar, go ahead and email us any questions that you might have at contact@RampedUp.io. All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into the subject matter. And really, it's a very vexing problem when you think about why Salesforce.com will actually become outdated and inaccurate to begin with. And so, Serious Decisions has done a lot of research around this topic. And finding that on average, purchase contact lists are 15 months old at the point of sale. So if you're trying to populate Salesforce with third-party data and you are importing that information into the system, you're already 15 months off currency. And then if it's been a while since you've cleaned up Salesforce, and you're noticing that Serious Decisions has also said that contact data, B2B contact data, expires about a rate of 25% per year. And that stands to reason. If you're listening to this and you had the same job last year, then good for you. But our society is one that is very transient right now, and that's indicative in when our sellers are trying to profile their accounts and ensuring they're talking to the right people at the right accounts. But those individuals move on and try to maintain that and keep that constant conversation with their accounts. And moving on, Ken, to the next slide, if you will. If you look at this mesmerizing, quite frankly, cheap martech marketing technology landscape, you'll notice on the far right there, if you click the button there, Ken, the data column, and just think about how many data providers that are out there and all the different ways that data providers really go about their business in terms of finding install technology data, or firmographic specific data, or data that originates from small business or large business, or corporate filings or credit filings or mailing filings. And so there's just so many different ways to try to originate data and keep it accurate and keep it clean. And so multiple list buys is another way that you'd have some inaccurate data inside of Salesforce.com. And then lastly, you think about again, we discussed this topic briefly before, but how often individuals are either moving inside of an organization or moving outside of an organization. And the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has stated that average person will have 11.7 jobs within their lifetime between 18 and 48. And that might even be low for some salespeople, that I know. So, you marry all these concepts together, importing bad data, looking at the natural decay of data, getting information erroneously into your system through either salespeople importing data incorrectly or non-standardized. And it's no wonder, you need to clean Salesforce.com up. And so that really brings us to the topic of today's webinar, how and why to clean Salesforce.com. And so let's look at three ideas that we have at RampedUp to keep Salesforce.com clean. And so the first is really look at the information as it comes into the system. And so a best practice that we recommend to all of our customers is that make information come into your system via leads, and then have a way to gate that information, ensuring that it's accurate and not redundant. Secondly, you want to empower your sellers or empower your users to clean their accounts inside of Salesforce.com. And again, that might seem like an oxymoron in the fact that they might be the reasons why the data is inaccurate to begin with. We'll tell you a couple of tips and tricks that we've instituted that really, by empowering the users, you can ensure that you have, the most accurate information for your best accounts. And then lastly, the whole system-wide concept of cleaning your database for the three main tables that B2B contacts in B2B data reside, such as the leads, the contacts, and the account, the account table. So let's go on to the next slide, Ken, if you will, and take a look at cleaning data as it comes in. So to the right there, you see a screenshot of our battle card, and I believe this is the leads battle card inside of RampedUp. So Ken, why don't I do this? I'll hand the controls over to you, and why don't you share a little bit about real-time lead appending and lead appending in general as a way to keep data clean as it comes into CRM.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. So let's jump in to a Salesforce instance, which is, by the way, an enterprise edition and what you would need for our tool to API in. So this is an enterprise edition, and I jumped to the leads tab, which we were just talking about, and if I go to my leads page, you'll see that I've had a number of leads drop in that I need to work on with the bare minimum of data, so name and email address. So what a rep would be then tasked to do is obviously provide additional data, or in the system itself provide that for the rep. So one of the tools that we have is for the rep to come in and work on the leads that would be assigned to that rep, and some of the functionality is in this battle card, what we call a battle card inside of Salesforce on the lead tab, is to look at that lead and then populate it with data that, one, they either find through telemarketing and demand gen, or using our tool, which would allow us to go out and update this data without the rep being required to key punch or go find that data. So we can go out through this import to Salesforce tool, and I'm going to click on this just to show you that you can see already through this leads tab that there's some data out for Tim that we know, one, based off his email address, we can get the URL plus some of his demographics as an employee of this company. So once it imports, and I'm going to refresh the screen here, so you'll see that we have pre-populated the data in the fields in your Salesforce instance on this lead record for Tim to include some numbers that would be a direct dial for him, his title, the company name where we did not have that populated before. So, I mean, if you're thinking in terms of, conference, your website, web to lead forms, etc., where you may be collecting minimal amounts of data, this is one good kind of a micro level way for a rep to come in, by lead and search for, using the RampedUp tool, additional information that may help in qualifying this lead and moving them into a contact and hopefully a buy cycle. So that is one of the tools that at the rep level, and to your point, Scott, that you can have some functionality for that rep to provide additional data for leads. Back to you, Scott.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ken. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really has been instrumental in a lot of our customers in terms of, the impact that the speed to lead really has. So, in this instance, is a great use case is that, you have a minimal amount of information. And so, what do I do with that data, right? And, not all leads are created equal. And so we think about this concept of speed to lead. There really are 5 main points that you want to think about in terms of getting that information, in the hands of the right people to make the right, outbound sales activities based on the data that you can append to basically a skeleton record. The first, buyers are liars. This is an axiom that all salespeople should know. If they don't, then please feel free to use it. A recent survey found that 70% of all online forms are purposely completed with inaccurate or incorrect information. And the reason for that is pretty obvious, right? The reason why you would do something like that is because you don't want a salesperson, you want the gated content or the gated functionality, but you don't want a salesperson or you don't want to be on a marketing list after you've received that information. The give-get isn't equitable in terms of the buyer. And so, that's one of the reasons why you want to, complete or remediate information that comes in through an online form and into Salesforce as a lead. Secondly, to quote Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. So Inside Sales tells us that the sales rep or the company that responds to the inbound lead first will get the deal 35 to 50% of the time. So, all things being equal, be the person that sets the tone and is the one that anchors what your company can do and what other companies cannot do by, reaching out to that person immediately, right? And you can do that by having the correct information. Secondly, lead scoring. How are you going to prioritize your leads if you don't have all the necessary information, such as a title, such as industry, such as location, such as an email address or a phone number, company size, revenue size, and the like. By having that information, you can score your leads to ensure that you are reaching out to those that are qualified as quick as humanly possible and getting it into the best people in your organization to make that outbound solicitation. Next, we talk about progressive profiling, which really is one of my favorites because if you think about it, there's really, you don't want to ask for more than 4 or 5 pieces of information on an online form fill. And if that's the case, you want to ask for information, just the bare minimum information that you can append and get that's readily available from another source like RampedUp. But then you want to ask for information that is specifically unique to your sales process, your sales cycle, such as, when is the next buying event? What is your satisfaction with your current provider? What providers are you using, as an example? You get that information that can influence the deal and let, a third party give you the name, rank, and serial number of these individuals. And then lastly, hiding behind a Gmail. If you think about, automated form fill functionality that Google has to pre-populate a form, it'll give you all the personal information, but it won't give you any of the professional information. And I think a couple of people registered for this webinar using their Gmail account. Using RampedUp and other tools, you can bounce that free mail up against B2B mail and see if you really do have some hidden nuggets and having some qualified leads that are hidden behind a Gmail address. So take a look at some of these ideas. I mean, it really is one of the main reasons why we talk about using the lead as the main entryway into CRM, appending it as it comes in real time so that its information can get disseminated and into your system accurately. So that's the first way. The second way, we talk about is to empower the users or empower the sellers. And so, again, I know it seems like it might be an oxymoron by empowering a salesperson because they might be the person that entered the information erroneously to begin with. But in this instance, we talk about a piece of clean functionality that's embedded within RampedUp on the account tab that'll allow them to do everything that our system can do, which is append and remediate and complete information, inside of an account and the contacts that are associated with that account just with the push of one button. So Ken, I'll hand it over to you to tell us a little bit about this clean functionality that RampedUp has.
Okay, so let's jump back in. I did have one question. Actually, I asked a couple different ways, but when we did this, a couple of questions were around using this import. So, in this example, this is a manual update. We'll show you later on in the presentation about an automated facility to make sure these leads are updated as you move forward. And then jumping into the clean, that is on the account tab. So I'm going to jump into an account and show you once you have that lead qualified and you move them in as a contact, or you at least hope that that's what a rep is progressing these leads to contacts to do. So here's an account DocuSign. If we scroll down to our contact section, just take a look here. We do have basically a list of employees that are at DocuSign, or so we assume that they are at DocuSign. So the clean functionality takes us from the lead tab to the contacts tab, but this functionality is sitting on the accounts tab so that we, at a higher level, and we saw this on the in the presentation, what the clean functionality will do is update and complete the firmographic information you see in the background here. So I know that does not change a lot, but from time to time it can, and this would allow an immediate update from our tool to the Salesforce instance. Then moving through, it also goes and updates contacts that you currently have in your Salesforce instance, so it adds specific information about that particular contact, may add a location change or a title change. And then it also, based on some functionality we have on the back end where you tell us, you identify for new contacts that are potential buyers, so you give us a title list of buyers that may be in the buying committee for your product or service, and we go look for those contacts by title and append them to this account record so that you now have specific buyers, not just any contact related to the account, but specific buyers that would be related to your product or service and what you're trying to position as a solution. And then lastly, you can see we identify contacts that you may have in this account that are no longer with this account, and we label that as inactive. And then one other piece of functionality that we have with that is we can move that inactive contact into the leads tab as a lead. So if it was a previous buyer, and while I'm going through this, I'm going to go ahead and click on this confirm so that we update firmographics, and then we start working on the contact. So it'll go through an iteration. And while it's doing that, and we're talking about the leads tab and these buyers, so we're going and looking for specific buyers. So here on the back end, this is what I'm talking about. We call them decision makers because these would be titles that would be directly involved as a decision maker on your product or service. So you tell us who those buyers would be in that buying committee, and it's as simple as adding a title that you find out that might be involved in your product or service. You add that title, or if that title is not needed, or you're cleaning up, or you're refocusing your efforts, you just remove that title. And so once you can see that some of the cleaning has been processed, and let me refresh the screen, and we should start seeing some updates in these account records. Let me click in. So as it's running through its progression here, we'll start seeing the updates on the contact records where it finds a contact that is no longer at DocuSign. And the reason we can do that is, if you're familiar with Dun & Bradstreet, just like the D&B number for a company, we use the same system where we tag a contact record and with a number, and we track that contact then, and we develop an employment history that allows us to track that individual so that we know, based on information, that particular employee is no longer at, in this case, DocuSign. So you can see I just refreshed the screen, so we have some inactives here. And not only do we have some inactives, but we added some information to current employees at DocuSign. So if we now, just to follow with that, when we do tag them as inactive, so if I click into Chris Braithwaite here just to show you, all we're doing is we're appending inactive in front of the first name so that it's an identifier for you, and maybe your business processes, you leave those inactives in that account, or maybe you run some periodic report that says, hey, we can remove these inactives because we know they've moved on. And if Chris was a buyer of your product or service at DocuSign, well, then obviously you want to follow that particular contact to the new company. And we could see that, as we did that, we had people who were at DocuSign who we've identified at other companies now, and we've dropped them in here as a lead to allow you to follow that lead now, previous contact as a buyer, so you have a warm call or a warm lead right into a new account that could help you position your product or service quicker, have a quicker sales cycle because they have previously bought from you before. Scott, back to you. And hopefully you're not on mute, because it sounds like if you're talking, you're talking.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was talking to myself. I'm sorry about that. I'll say, like, I have Chris. I see Chris 3. I see Chris 3 from the bottom there as a new lead for us. Right.
That's right.
Over at Dimension Data.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that is such an amazing tool. And so if you think about, we've had this at play for a couple of years now, and it really is the best way to find the old contact new company. So our friend Craig Elias talks about triggering events, and that really is one of the best triggering events, right? Old contact new company. You've already marketed to these people. You've already sold these people. They're raving fans. They understand your business model. Help them unpack at their new job, and that is just an amazing way to make some very quick wins about turning over these old contacts over their new companies. And it's cool, and that's what sellers really like about this, and especially in framing it in the account-based selling framework, is that this is my account. I'm supposed to know DocuSign inside and out. How long would it take me to profile that account, get that information accurate and updated if I were to do this without the push of a button, right? I think some recent studies have stated that salespeople spend 27% of their time focused on non-selling activities such as cleaning up accounts like this, right? That's equivalency of giving another week in your or another month in your quarter, right? So it's a big deal. It's certainly a big deal. So moving to the last piece of our theme here in terms of cleaning up and keeping Salesforce.com accurate. There's a system-wide functionality that we provide, and a lot of our customers ask us for in terms of, it's great that we're cleaning it coming in. It's great that I can empower the reps, but my job is to keep the entire CRM accurate. And if that's your responsibility, and that's one of the challenges that you have as a sales leader, we offer the functionality to work with the leads, the contacts, and the accounts table, and keeping those updated and accurate on an ongoing basis. A couple of caveats, of course, there are API limits you have to work within, the API threshold that you have with Salesforce. But over and above that, it's really more of a functionality in terms of, what your business rules are. And so, Ken, turning it over to you, let's discuss a little bit about what system-wide cleaning looks like from a ramped-up standpoint.
All right. So jumping back in, so we have our leads. These are ones that just dropped in today from my clean on just the DocuSign account. And so if I go back to my ramped up portal, and I have some administrative functions. So if you think in terms of a Salesforce admin, sales ops, we can link in then to these three important areas, so the lead, the contacts, and the accounts. And you notice here on my lead import, and I had to do this for our demonstration purposes, but I have it turned off. And that's because, and somebody asked this earlier about automating this update or appending of leads. So once I turn this functionality on, it will go out, look at my Salesforce instance for leads that are in my leads tab, and start a process of trying to gather additional information. So I'm going to force it right now so that it starts running. And while that's happening, we can go back over and not only today's leads, but I'm going to look at all open leads, and we'll start seeing it populate data that is coming from our ramped up tool on a more global basis. So this would be, again, an admin user on the back end forcing an update or turning on this service so that every 5 to 15 minutes it's going out and polling the leads tab to see what leads need additional data to make them more qualified, or at least so that the rep who owns that lead now can go after that lead to try to convert them into a qualified opportunity and a contact within an account. So that's running on the leads in the background. And what else will happen is you have this opportunity to allow that to run automatically. So as you're having your demand gens and you're doing your conferences and you're dropping these leads in, or they're coming from your web, it's automatically running, so it's always adding data and trying to identify who these leads are, getting you more data so that you can update them and get them in that rep's hands to qualify. So at the same time, just like we did the clean on an individual rep level, we have an append function at the system level so that we could, instead of depending on the rep to do it one-off per account, we can force a system-wide, either one by an individual account, or if we take that off, we could now push this out and it would go and append and think that clean functionality where we go and look at all of our contacts and follow that same process where we are basically cleaning each account and the contacts that are in those accounts for updated information, old contacts, so marking them as inactive, etc. And that is a function, that is an option that you can select. So if we, as we're updating those leads and we find, or those contacts rather, and we find those that are no longer at that account, we can mark them as inactive and move them to the leads tab. So all that can function not only for globally, but if you have, and you saw when I clicked on, if there's a particular territory that has an empty head count and you need to prep it for the next rep coming in, we have the capability of doing that as well. And then last but not least is the account record and all the firmographics. So we could, again, just like the clean, we could force an append by account name if we needed to, or globally, so that we keep our records fresh and the data up to date, so that we have good data going into our demand gen by territory, not only for reps, but even for marketing purposes as well. So each table, we have the back-end capability system-wide, so globally we could go in and affect our data that's sitting in our Salesforce instance. And just remember that, because I've seen a question popping up, Mike is asking about a professional instance, and the API only applies to the enterprise and above instance levels in Salesforce. So with that, Scott, back over to you.
All right, Ken, we appreciate that. Yeah, this really is a very succinct way of keeping all of CRM in Salesforce.com updated and accurate, and of course following your business rules. So, a couple of things that you see in those links are the field mapping, append contact field mapping, append account field mapping. So, of course we can, create the business rules so that, we can make the decisions, systematically on when we want to, overwrite or not overwrite. All right, well, that will wrap it up. These are really the three main topics that we see and that we want to discuss today in terms of, helping, salespeople and sales leaders keep Salesforce.com clean and accurate. How and why, right? Why do you do it? Because data expires. It expires because you imported in there inaccurately, your salespeople have keyed it in inaccurately, or you haven't cleaned it in a while and those individuals have just moved on to other organizations. All right, that's the whole concept of Salesforce.com. The three different ways that we can help you clean it. Clean it as it comes in as a lead. Empower your sellers to clean up their own accounts. It really is the backbone of account-based selling, and that way you will ensure that the accounts that have salespeople assigned to them are going to be the ones that are cleaning those accounts and making sure that data is accurate and effective. And lastly, the system-wide cleaning, which is on the account tab, on the account table, the lead table, or on the contacts table. So that'll do it for us. We appreciate your time today. And as always, we have a special thank you and a giveaway for the participants and the registrants of our webinar here. So try on us. So if you want to try the real-time lead appending, you want to try the clean functionality to empower your sellers, or maybe you want to try to use this system in its entirety, we'll provide that system. We'll provide that for you as a way of introduction and as a thank you for attending our webinar. And then lastly, if you have any outstanding questions, please contact us at contact@RampedUp.io or visit us on the web at RampedUp.io. And that'll do it for us. And Ken, I think next time we're going to try to touch base on triggering events and try to find interesting ways to talk to our accounts that are targeted for account-based selling. Is that what's on the docket for us next?
Yep. Next, we'll be doing more of a direct demand gen that you can use our trigger event engine for. That's correct.
Cool. Well, thank you again, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.